The city lights glittered like a scattered necklace across the Hudson, each pinprick of gold reflected in my apartment's floor-to-ceiling windows. I rested my forehead lightly against the glass, the coolness grounding me while the silk of my ivory blouse whispered against my skin. Below, Manhattan pulsed and hummed. Yet here, 34 floors up, everything felt strangely still. My phone buzzed on the marble counter, a small vibration that sliced through the hush. I almost didn't check. Almost. But curiosity always wins. A notification from my college friend Jess. "Have you seen this?" A link followed. I tapped, and there it was, grainy footage, lit by fairy lights and the glint of crystal. My sister's wedding, 7 years ago. The clip that had somehow gone viral overnight. And there she stood, Lila. Perfect, poised, her satin gown catching the camera's flash like a halo. The moment replayed in merciless clarity, her voice rising over the laughter of guests, champagne flute raised. "This is my night," she declared, her smile sharp as glass. "And let's all remember who really shines in this family." The room on the screen rippled with a collective gasp I could almost hear again. My own face appeared in the frame, frozen, wide-eyed, cheeks flushed with humiliation I'd fought to bury. 7 years had passed. I'd built walls of success and silence around that memory. But tonight, with one viral clip, those walls trembled. I closed my eyes, heartbeat quickening. The past had just found me again. 7 years earlier, the night air over Charleston smelled of magnolia and sea salt. The rented garden of the historic estate shimmered beneath strings of tiny bulbs, each light a perfect pearl against the dark. I remember brushing my palms against the smooth chiffon of my slate-blue bridesmaid dress, willing my hands to stop trembling. I'd flown home from Boston for this. Despite the growing distance between Lila and me, distance she'd stretched with every sideways comment about my phase of chasing dreams, I still wanted to stand beside her. She was my older sister, after all. "Don't slouch," my mother had whispered earlier, tugging a stray hair into place as though my posture might ruin the photos. I'd smiled thinly, the way you smile when you've already swallowed too many small slights. The ceremony itself glowed, Lila radiant in her custom gown, her new husband beaming. When it ended, the garden erupted with applause and clinking glasses. I thought for a fleeting second that maybe this night could be about love, not competition. Then came the toast. Lila tapped her crystal flute, her diamond catching the light. "I just want to say," she began, her voice carrying easily over the hush, "this is my night. And let's not forget who truly shines in this family." A ripple of awkward laughter. My stomach dropped. She turned, eyes glittering, and added, too sweetly, too loud, "Olivia, you've always tried so hard to find your thing. But tonight? Tonight, everyone knows who the real star is." The clink of glasses rang like a gavel. Heat flooded my cheeks. My throat tightened until it hurt to breathe. Around me, guests whispered, their smiles faltering as if they'd all tasted something bitter. I caught my grandmother's gaze across the tables, Grandma June, whose silver hair glowed like moonlight. She tilted her head, her eyes a quiet harbor of understanding. Later, when the music swelled and I slipped away to the shadowed edge of the garden, Grandma found me. She pressed a small enamel locket into my palm. Inside, a single word etched in tiny script, "Rise." Her voice was low, steady. "Baby, people's cruelty is never about you. Let it be the wind that lifts you." The lump in my throat threatened to choke me. I nodded, clutching the locket as if it could steady my heartbeat. That night, under a canopy of magnolia and cold starlight, I made a silent vow. I would build a life beyond their narrow expectations, a life no one could belittle. Boston became my refuge, a city that thrummed with possibility and never once asked who my sister was. I arrived with 2 suitcases, the enamel locket tucked safely in the smallest pocket, and a bank account that barely covered 3 months of rent. Days blurred into long hours at a cramped co-working space where the smell of burnt espresso and overheated laptops clung to the air. By night, I balanced trays at a noisy waterfront bistro, smiling through sore feet and the sting of dish soap on cracked knuckles. Still, every dawn held a sliver of promise. I'd return to the co-working space when it opened, the streets still slick with morning dew, and sketch out designs for the sustainable interior design firm I dreamed of creating. It was during one of those bleary-eyed mornings that I met Marianne Holloway, a seasoned architect with salt and pepper hair and a quiet authority that made people lean in when she spoke. She noticed the blueprints spread across my table and, after a few questions, simply said, "You've got vision. Don't hide it." Marianne became the mentor I hadn't known I needed. She taught me how to translate sketches into reality, how to pitch clients without shrinking my voice, how to charge what my work was worth. The early years were brutal. Some nights I'd collapse onto my mattress, still just a mattress on the floor, so tired I couldn't peel off my paint-smeared jeans. There were weeks when every invoice seemed to be lost in some client's email void, when self-doubt hissed like steam from the city grates. But there were wins too, small and dazzling. The first time a boutique hotel accepted my design proposal, I celebrated with a $3 cupcake and the locket warm against my chest. A year later, when a glossy magazine featured one of my spaces, a rooftop lounge wrapped in reclaimed wood and soft lantern light, I nearly dropped the issue in disbelief. I shared none of it with my family. On calls, I offered polite updates. "Work's busy. Boston's cold." My mother would sigh about how Lila's husband just got another promotion, and I'd smile into the receiver, the secret of my own growing firm tucked safely between my ribs. By the time I turned 30, Bennett and Company Interiors had outgrown our first studio. We moved into a sunlit loft in the Seaport district, where potted olive trees reached toward the skylights and the air smelled faintly of cedar. Major developers began to court my designs. Marianne clasped my shoulder one evening after we'd signed our biggest contract yet and whispered, "You've risen, Olivia, just like you promised yourself." Her words stirred the memory of Grandma June's locket. That single word, rise, felt less like advice now and more like prophecy. 7 years after the wedding, I stood at the top of my own quiet empire. And still, my family knew almost nothing. The email arrived on a gray Tuesday morning, subject line simple, "Family in Boston next weekend, can we visit?" I stared at the screen, the steam from my coffee curling like question marks in the cool air. 7 years had passed since Lila's wedding. In that time, I'd mastered the art of polite distance, holiday phone calls, birthday texts. But an in-person visit? That was new. I typed a careful reply. "Of course. Come by Saturday afternoon." When the day arrived, the city wore its spring best. Cherry blossoms spilled pale pink petals across the cobblestone streets. From the tall windows of my Seaport loft, the harbor shimmered under a soft blue sky. I'd instructed my team to clear the space, leaving only the heart of what I'd built. The curated oak shelves lined with design portfolios, the bronze floor lamp whose gentle glow made every texture bloom. Framed magazine spreads hung on one wall, my rooftop lounge bathed in amber light, the eco-resort lobby wrapped in reclaimed wood. At exactly 3 o'clock, the elevator dinged. My mother stepped out first, clutching her handbag like a shield. My father followed, his familiar cologne a sudden tug at old memories. And then Lila, her blonde hair swept into a casual knot, a diamond glinting on her hand. "Olivia," she said, her voice honeyed, almost too casual. "This is wow." Her gaze traveled from the high ceilings to the custom linen sofas, lingering on the framed magazine covers. I offered coffee and a smile. "Welcome to Bennett and Company Interiors. This is our headquarters." Lila blinked. "Your headquarters?" "Yes," I said, savoring the quiet weight of the moment. "I founded the firm 6 years ago. We design luxury spaces, hotels, private residences, sustainable resorts. That rooftop lounge on the magazine wall? One of our projects." My father's brow furrowed. "You own all this?" "I built all this," I corrected gently. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. The hum of the harbor beyond the windows filled the silence. My mother finally exhaled. "Olivia, We had no idea. I shrugged lightly, though my pulse drummed in my ears. I know. Lila's cheeks flushed the pale pink of the cherry blossoms outside. I thought you were still freelancing, doing little design jobs. Her voice wavered, and I caught a flicker of something, uncertainty, maybe even regret. I walked toward the oak table where Grandma June's locket rested, catching the afternoon light. I opened it, the single word rise gleaming inside. Remember your wedding night? I asked softly, my gaze holding hers. Her eyes widened. Olivia. You said, this is my night. Let's all remember who really shines in this family. I let the memory settle between us, not as accusation, but as fact. That night hurt more than you'll ever know, but it also lit a fire I didn't know I had. The room stayed still except for the gulls crying faintly over the harbor. I closed the locket with a gentle snap. So yes, Lila, I found my thing, and I've been shining quietly ever since. Lila's lips parted, words caught somewhere between apology and disbelief. My mother reached for my hand, her eyes damp. For the first time in years, I felt no trace of that old sting, only the steady warmth of the life I had built and the undeniable truth of my own rising. I drew a slow breath, letting the quiet stretch until the only sound was the faint ticking of the brass clock on the far wall. For years I'd imagined this moment. The tables turned, the power shifted, but now that it was here, it felt less like triumph and more like clarity. I want us to have a relationship, I said finally, my voice even. But it has to be different from what it was. My mother straightened, the tension in her shoulders softening. Different how? I ran a finger over the smooth curve of Grandma June's locket. First, honesty. No more of the sideways jabs or quiet competitions. We either speak with respect or we don't speak at all. Lila flinched, a faint pink rising to her cheeks. Second, I continued, I want each of us to chase something that matters to us, not what looks good on paper. Mom, you've always loved painting. You put it aside to keep the family running. Pick up a brush again. Dad, you talk about writing that travel memoir, start it. And Lila, I let my sister meet my gaze. Find something that belongs to you beyond a perfect guest list or a perfect diamond. Something that fills you, not just impresses others. Lila's eyes glistened. For a long moment she said nothing, and I almost heard the quiet crack of old pride. These aren't demands, I added gently. They're conditions for us to grow together. I won't stand in a room where someone is diminished, including me. Not anymore. My father nodded slowly, as if the idea of his own unfinished story had just come alive. My mother's lips curved in a trembling smile, and Lila, my sister who once crowned herself the only star, finally whispered, I didn't know how much I hurt you. I was jealous. You always had courage I couldn't find. I thought making you small would make me feel bigger. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry, Olivia. Something inside me eased, like a knot untying. I had imagined this apology for years, but I hadn't realized how little I needed it now. I accept that, I said softly. But the real work isn't in saying sorry. It's in choosing better every day. Outside, the late afternoon light turned the harbor silver. For the first time since that long-ago wedding, I felt my family's eyes on me not with comparison or critique, but with something closer to wonder. The power had shifted, yes, but not in the way I once fantasized. This wasn't revenge. It was balance. A week later, my phone buzzed with a photo from Mom, a sunlit canvas propped on an easel. A swirl of cobalt and lavender stretched across it, her caption a single line, started again today. That same evening, Dad emailed me 3 rough paragraphs of a travel memoir he'd begun drafting on yellow legal paper. The words were raw, unpolished, but alive. I could almost hear the rustle of train stations and the hush of faraway forests through his sentences. And Lila called. Her voice, tentative but steadier than I expected, carried across the line. I enrolled in a ceramics class, she said. I don't know if I'm any good, but I can't stop smiling when I'm at the wheel. I closed my eyes and let her words settle. For the first time in years, our conversation wasn't a tug-of-war. It was simply two sisters speaking, without the weight of old rivalries. Later that night, I walked along the harbor. The city lights shimmered against the black water like scattered stars, the same lights that once kept me company during those endless nights of building a dream from scraps. I slipped Grandma June's locket from my pocket and opened it.
Rise.
The single word caught the glow of a street lamp, its tiny engraving more than advice now. It was a map of every choice, every quiet victory, every hour I'd stood firm in the face of doubt. I thought of the girl who had once stood in the shadows of a wedding garden, cheeks burning, heart splintered. She had believed she needed someone else's approval to matter. But the woman standing at the edge of the harbor knew better. I lifted my chin to the soft night breeze, a smile unfolding like a secret finally spoken. We had all risen, each in our own way. And as the water lapped gently against the pier, I whispered the words that had carried me through every storm, a final promise to myself and to anyone who might listen. I will never let someone else decide how brightly I shine.